Good morning. Can you all hear me? This is Amy at OHCS.
What should they do if they can hear you?
If you can hear me, can you just put yes in the chat box, please?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Great.
Great. Thank you so much, Kate. We're just going to wait a couple minutes to make sure that everyone has time to log on and get connected, and then we'll start the webinar. I'm glad that you all are here, and we'll be back in just a couple minutes. All right, good morning. We're going to start the LIFT Homeownership NOFA webinar. And This is Amy Cole with Oregon Housing and Community Services. Rick Ruzicka is in the room with me, helping me to do this webinar. So we hope that we will have at least an informative webinar if it's not especially exciting, but we hope to keep you interested. So just to let you know, we have everyone on the phone is muted. That way we don't have to, worry about anyone's papers rustling and background conversations and stuff. And you'll notice on your screen that you can submit questions. There's also a chat box. We prefer, if possible, if you can submit your comments and questions in the question box. That's a little easier for us mechanics-wise in this room. But we will also check the chat box as we go forward. So let's get started. Okay, so this is just the agenda for the webinar. Right now we're in the welcome period, and then we'll talk about dates. We'll do an overview of the program and go through the submission requirements, talk about some general reminders before submission, and then take questions. But we'll also take questions and answer them as we can as we go through. So if you have questions on a specific part, feel free to submit them as we go through the webinar. All right, so this is just an important part of our webinar process. If you have questions during the open webinar period, they should be submitted to the NOFA at oregon.gov website. And just let us know that it's a LIFT NOFA question in the subject line, please. FAQs are now live on the NOFA website, and we'll be publishing new FAQs. We try to do it weekly, and we try to do it on Fridays, but I don't want to promise that it will be that way every week, especially with some holidays coming up and stuff. But we try to do them as regularly as possible. We haven't actually received very many homeownership FAQs, and I'm hoping that's a good sign that that the application is pretty easy to understand this time around. We'll accept questions until January 9th. That will give us enough time to answer all of the final questions submitted prior to the due date of the application, which is Friday, January 18th. And okay, let's go forward. So just a little bit about this offering. There is $11.3 million available for homeownership, and there's a soft set-aside, 50% to rural areas and 50% to urban areas. So 5.6 for each area. And just a reminder, this has not changed since last year. For LIFT, we do new construction or conversion of existing non-housing structures. And we've clarified this a little since last year, that developments that are under construction, including any site work at the time of application, are not eligible for funding through this NOFA. We've tightened that up a little bit. Last year there were some questions and a little bit of confusion about it. So this year we just tried to make it a little more clear, and this is what we're doing. So, and as with last time, developments that begin construction after reservation and before closing could possibly have the reservation rescinded. And as I said just a couple of minutes ago, projects that are going to rehabilitate existing residential structures or housing units are not eligible for funding through LIFT. Okay, so the definition for rural areas has not changed. However, we did try to make it a little more clear and kind of reformatted it, but it's the same that we used last year and the same that we used for our rental NOFA as well. So there are no communities within the urban growth boundary are considered rural. They're all considered urban. Oregon communities that have populations of 15,000 or less that are in an MSA are considered rural. And then in areas where the outside MSAs and outside the Portland urban growth boundary of 40,000 or less are considered rural. So that's exactly the same definition as last year, it's just worded a little differently. And of course, urban areas are all the areas of the state that are not considered rural. This is also the same as last year. In the NOFA this year, you probably noticed that there are some additional definitions. We thought that this might make it easier to think about how projects are serving communities of color. So I'm not going to go through all of these definitions, but just pointing out that those have been added since last year, and we used, as is noted in the NOFA, the protocol for culturally responsive organizations. That's where we got our definitions from. Okay, same as last year, and if you're new to the program, I apologize that I keep saying same as last year, but just recognizing that people may have taken a look at the NOFA last year and decided they weren't ready to apply, but letting people know that a lot of things have not changed since last year. So for funding request limits, applicants are requesting the lesser of the land value plus improvements in site work, but not including housing structures, or $75,000 per LIFT homeownership unit. And the value of the land needs to be supported by an appraisal. But you don't have to have the appraisal at the time of application. The affordability period for this program is a minimum of 20 years. And loans can be satisfied through payment at the end of that 20 years, repayment, or sponsors or owners can choose to extend the affordability period for another 20 years. And then at the end of that second 20 years, so at the end of 40 years, the loan is considered satisfied. All LIFT units are affordable to households earning 80% or less than area median income, and that's at the time of the first sale and any subsequent resales for the entire affordability period. Construction standards, same as last year. We accept both traditional and alternative construction approaches, and we are looking for a 30-year standard for durability. Units have to be ready for initial sale within 36 months of the OHCS LIFT reservation, and that date starts when the reservation letter is signed. Let's see. Profit is restricted to 7% of the total project cost. We felt like the profit was a little confusing last time around, so we tried to clarify that a bit in this new NOFA. Underwriting guidelines, I'm not going to go through all of these because you don't want me to read this big long slide to you, but this is lifted right from the NOFA. And so I'll just hit the highlights. When you come in for an application, we need you to have your financing identified for the development of the project. And if you're using a construction lender, we'd like to see a letter of interest from that construction lender. And we will, of course, look at your construction schedule and, take a look and make sure that it will be able to meet the 36-month, getting to sale time period. And, you know, we'll just look to make sure that due diligence has been done so that we know that you have mortgage lenders that are willing to lend on the homes that you'll be developing. And then, you know, we'll look also, because LIFT funds are funded with the Article 11 Q bonds, and the state has to have an ownership or operating interest in all projects that are developed. We'll be looking to see what kind of experience and or understanding the sponsor has in using a land lease or other type of structure that allows the state to have the the operating interest in the property. We'll look to make sure that, you know, you have a knowledge of the market for home ownership where you're developing the housing. And of course, we want to see that the zoning is, you know, allows for the project, because of the time constraints with LIFT and with a 36-month timeline for getting to sale. We need the zoning to be appropriate from the beginning. We don't have time to go through rezoning processes. And as I said, the valuation of the land needs to justify our LIFT investment, and so there will need to be a third-party appraisal, not at application, but before loan closing. And we'll take a look at your construction costs, make sure that they're thorough, reasonable, and that you have a defensible method used to get to those construction costs. The project needs to work, need LIFT to work, so you need to show a clear need for the LIFT funds. And this is the new thing we have done this year. We've added that a phase 1, it's not required at application, but will be required before closing. And we've made this optional for small projects of 4 units or less. Those projects can choose to sign a waiver, or it's kind of a waiver, but they can opt out of doing a phase 1. But for projects of 5 or more units, a phase 1 must be done. And I just went through every single one of those things on the slide. Anyway, even though I said I wasn't going to. So this is just a little bit about compliance monitoring, and this is once the homes are built and sold. We will so there'll be an annual $10 per unit fee to cover the monitoring, and we will just we'll just need an annual report from you, and it will include all of these things. So it's pretty light compared to, say, rental compliance monitoring. Okay, so this year we have, as part of the LIFT NOFA, we have the NOFA itself, and then we have LIFT application documents. Some of you may be used to seeing an instructions document that has been used in past years with different programs, but this year what we decided to do was try to integrate we integrated the instructions into the application documents. So that's a new thing, but it's one less document to have to read while you're filling out the application. So just making you aware of that. Okay, so now I'm going to go through the application submission, and I'll go through part by part and submission by submission. So we'll start with the first part 1, which is just, let's go. We'll click the slide.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. This part it includes the NOFA cover sheet, an authorization and acceptance form, which just means that the entity is authorized to apply for these funds and will accept them if they're awarded. A Board of Directors resolution will be submitted if that's required by your organization, as well as a copy of you'll need to submit a copy of organizational documents. New this year is a diversity, equity, and inclusion agreement, and all applicants need to sign that. It talks about ways that the organization can strive to include diversity, equity, and inclusion in its practices, both in the people it serves and within organizations. So we're trying that. That's a new thing this year. And then the ever popular application submission checklist. Now, I just talked about this. It just commits to making strides toward including the things listed on the form. It is not meant to be all-inclusive, that your agency or your organization is doing all of them right now. You may be doing some of them, you may be doing all of them, you may be doing none of them, but it just commits to working toward at least some of those things. So, okay, part 2 is the applicant and project worksheet. So part 2 is a pretty long or pretty significant part of the application submission. It hasn't changed a lot from last year. On the form is, of course, the applicant and project information, information about the development team. You're going to let us know what types of what size of units you're developing, and which programs you're using, which for this, of course, is LIFT. You'll be listing your target population if you have one, and also information about the site and the proposed buildings, or building the homes. So just a quick thing on that this information is given to our external review team, and that's a lot of what they know about the projects. So just when you're answering information, just make sure it's accurate and very clear, because some people on our review team will be experts in homeownership or real estate development, and some people won't be. So we're just giving you a heads up on that, and just recommending that you make sure that your answers to all the questions are accurate, thorough, and clear. Okay, part 3, minimum threshold requirements. There are a lot of submissions for this part, and we'll go through them. So you'll let us know whether your project is in a rural area or an urban area. And just a reminder that rural areas, of course, rural projects in rural areas are scored against other projects in rural areas, and same with urban. Urban projects are scored against other projects in urban areas. Okay, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, for zoning and site control, a project needs to be already zoned for the intended purpose, and as part of this, there is a zoning certification that will be filled out by whoever the zoning official is in your area. You need to let us know that you have site control, and submit that proof of site control. That's either a deed, an ownership deed, or a offer to purchase, a purchase agreement. And just a reminder, as I said, anything that needs a zoning change or annexation is not going to be a good fit for LIFT, just because of the timeline. oh wait, go back please, sorry.
No problem.
So just let us know if you are applying for any federal resources to use with your project, and you'll put that in this information as well. Your development schedule, which we already touched on. And this year, for the project site checklist, we are not doing, as you probably have figured out at this point, we're not doing site visits at this time. We're asking applicants to self-certify with the project site checklist. And if we feel like we need to do a site visit after we look at submissions, we'll contact you. Okay, 3.3, you're going to tell us about your development team capacity, capacity worksheet. This gives us information so that reviewers can take a look at sponsors' experience and capacity. If there is an area on this form or on this worksheet where the sponsor does not have experience or any capacity, just let us know how you plan to mitigate that, the risk of not having that experience or capacity. We just ask you to explain that. So that's 3.3A. 3.3B, real estate holdings. Just let us know about all of your real estate holdings. And yeah, that's what that is. 3.4 is the pro forma. We've reworked it a little from last year. It's basically the same thing, but we've tried to clarify the profit and also put space on there because for some sponsors in the first round were self-subsidizing home sales, so they had a silent second or adding other cash subsidies to subsidize, and lower the sales price of the home, and there was nowhere to show that on the last pro forma, so we've added that this time, hoping that will make the pro formas easier for us to take a look at on our end, but also allow space for everybody to put in all of the, just all of the information about their project. Okay, financial assumptions. This is you're just going to need to tell us what financial assumptions you used when creating your, not creating, but when planning your project. And we use an internal review team to take a look at that. So just make sure that it's, as with everything, complete and thorough, I would say. The architectural submission, same as it ever was. Vicinity map, context photos, preliminary site design and development plan, and other information about your site. Construction hard costs, yes, please submit all of your cost information. That helps us and helps you. Okay, the LIFT agreement commitment. This is just really agreeing to abide by all of the requirements of LIFT. If you receive a reservation from us. And 3.9, if you need your if you need a board approval, you need to send that along with 3.8. So 3.9 would be the board approval for this agreement.
You see the question.
And I see the question, how detailed does a preliminary site design need to be? You don't have an architect yet. Yes, we will accept very preliminary site designs. In the past, we have received maybe we can tell that an architect did not do it, that a sponsor manipulated a map to to do the site design, and that's okay. We just want to see kind of what your preliminary site plan looks like. And it's helpful to know also if there are wetlands or, you know, what's near the site as well. Okay. Ownership integrity. Yep, we just want to know that there has not been fraud, conviction, bankruptcy, or debarment for your organization. It's pretty self-explanatory. Okay. We're now moving into the 4.1 questionnaire, which is the competitive scoring. And I feel like there might be some more questions about this, but we're going to go forward with it. Okay, so this is also given to our external scoring committee, and they will score some parts of this 4.1 questionnaire. We have changed the scoring a bit since our last round and redistributed points in a little bit different way, and we're going to walk through it, but this is an overview of the sort of high-level categories of the points. Financial viability, 10 points, readiness to proceed, 15 points, subsidy and cost, 26 points, innovation, efficiency, and replicability, 9 points, capacity, 20 points, and we are scoring on service to communities of color this year. So that combined with MWESB is 20 points. So, and as I said, some of these categories will be scored by external scoring panels and some will be scored by internal scoring panels. Okay, so financial viability is based on the submissions for 3.2 through 3.7, and it's scored internally. Readiness to proceed, that is the questionnaire we went over, that's 3.2, and that's also scored internally. The subsidy and costs are based on the information you'll submit on questionnaire 4.1, and then we verify it against the project pro forma, and that's scored internally as well. Partnerships, innovation, and capacity, that total is 49 points, and it's based on the 4.1 questionnaire and scored by both internal and external committees, just so you know who's looking at what part of your application. Okay, tips for your narrative responses. So the number one thing is don't assume that the reader is familiar with your project or your organization. As I said, and as you know, if you've used our other programs, our scoring committees change every time we have an offering. So the same people are not on every scoring committee. So they may not, they may have sat on a scoring committee before and may know your organization, or members may not have. So that's just something to keep in mind as you're writing answers. And as I alluded to earlier, external reviewers do not have access to your complete application. They only receive a copy of these forms, 2.0, 3.1, and 4.1. So it is highly recommended that you use the project description on Form 2.0 to give a general overview of the project so that when reviewers are looking at that, they have a good idea at a high level what your project is about, how many units, and etc., things about your project. It's really important that you spell out your acronyms, at least for the first time you mention them in the application, and especially on these forms, just because we may not have the same definition of an acronym that you do. So just to make sure that we understand exactly what you're talking about, that's really helpful for us. And as I said earlier, not all reviewers are subject area experts. So just make sure that you're being pretty plain spoken, I would say, about what you're trying to convey to us. Okay. So I feel like these slides are a little out of order, but we're going to go over, so that was kind of things to keep in mind when you're filling out the 4.1 questionnaire. Now we're going to go through the questionnaire in excruciating detail, but I think it'll probably be a good thing. And sorry if it's too much detail, but I'd rather have too much than not enough. All right, so the LIFT questionnaire, you're going to tell us your per unit subsidy, and that's, you can score up to 20 points depending on how much you ask for. And your readiness to proceed can score up to 15 points. Your demonstration of construction costs that are lower than industry norms, and that means RS means, you can score up to 6 points this year. And you'll see also that we have broken down the demonstration of innovation, efficiency, and replicability into three separate parts of that question. And you can score up to 3 points for each question, so that's a maximum of 9 points. It seemed like last year, both on the homeownership and on the rental applications, that people had a hard time answering this question because innovation, efficiency, and replicability, although they are important parts of LIFT, they aren't completely related. Because a lot of times you can have innovation and replicability, but it may not be efficient. Or you may have efficiency and replicability, but it may not be innovative. So we tried to break that out to make it easier to answer that question. And as I said, the NWESB, your plans on how to address equity and diversity in your project through the use of NWESB contracting and subcontracting and professional services, that can score up to 5 points. And then demonstration of financial viability up to 10 points. And as I said before, that's based on your 3.2 through 3.7 submissions. Demonstration of capacity of your development team, and that's understanding of development dynamics up to 10 points. Your capacity of your who will be managing the project as it goes through its 20 or 40-year affordability period, that's also up to 10 points can be scored. And as I said earlier, our service to communities of color, that is also, that's new this year, and you can score up to 15 points. And one thing I want to say about this category is that we are asking some very pointed questions about communities of color in your region, if you're in a rural area, or in your urban area, if you're in an urban area for your project. And we recognize that the answers to these questions, I know especially for rural areas, could be a little tough. And not tough, but I guess I would say if you go through and answer all of the questions and say there's not a, I don't know, just in your planning for how to serve communities of color, it's going to differ between urban and rural areas. And we fully realize that there might be, we know that there are less resources and organizations that are culturally responsive and culturally specific in rural areas. So we know that your responses will be different, and I just wanted to say that. And that's why we score rural areas against, rural projects against rural projects and urban projects against urban projects. Okay, we're almost there. Thank you so much for hanging in through this very long PowerPoint and webinar, but we really appreciate you being here. So just some general reminders on the order of the application when you submit it. The original application, we request that that be single-sided. The copies can be double-sided, that's fine. Please make sure that each copy of the application, so the original and then the 2 copies, are complete and include all the same documents. Sometimes when we get copies, they are missing some attachments or pages. So just if you'll just take an extra second and check and make sure that we have all the same information as in the original and the copies. Make sure that your original application is signed. We have received many applications without signatures. We prefer that they be signed because it's required. We ask that you follow the order of the application submission checklist so that when the applications come in, they're in the same order, because we're reviewing quite a few of them, and it makes it easier for both our internal reviewers and external reviewers if we can easily locate all of the different attachments and submissions, and we don't have to kind of hunt around for it. That takes a long time on our end. And just make sure once again, everything that's on the checklist is submitted. It's really helpful if you use divider tabs, any kind of tabs you would like, we don't care what kind they are, to identify each section. So that's section 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can do it even more, you can do it in a more detailed way too, 3, 3.1, 3.2, etc. If that's up to you. And then please number every page of the application. And I'm going to choose to talk about this now. You probably have noticed that this year we have gone to Word templates in our application sheets. And so we did this because in the past there have been some problems with formatting, and looking to the future we will eventually go to an electronic submission, so this is kind of in the middle. And we hoped that it would address some of the problems people have had in the past with formatting. We know that they are a little bit hard to work with, or have been. It's a change that is not the easiest, but if you need help with any of the forms, please send an email to HONOFA to that email, honofa@oregon.gov, with the form and the issues that you're having, and we'll help you individually. We're glad to do that. Yeah, okay. And these are just some more reminders. Keep your responses within the stated length and font size in the application, and please use single spacing. As we said before, define your acronyms, answer the questions completely, submit only the documents and attachments that we've asked for on the application checklist and within the forms. And when you're submitting maps and photos, please make sure to mark the project location there so that we can see where they are. Okay, we're almost there. It's almost the last slide. Submit an original 2 copies and an electronic copy to us when you submit them. We were alerted to the fact that this may not be in the NOFA. Oops, sorry about that. But it's as usual, an original 2 copies and an electronic copy. As I said, applications are due January 18th by 4 o'clock. They need to be in our office by 4 o'clock. If they are postmarked by January 18th but not in our office, we will unfortunately not be able to review those. Those applications would be rejected. And our address is 725 Summer Street, Northeast, Suite B, in Salem. Just a reminder again, if you have questions, please submit them to the honofa@oregon.gov website, email. We're publishing FAQs now, and we'll accept questions till January 9th. And now, do you have any questions for us? I think if you click to the next one. And we are standing by to checking the chat box and the questions box to see if anybody has further questions. Rick and I are going to stay on for another 5 minutes or so. I haven't seen any questions or chats come in, so we'll be available for another five minutes unless we see a bunch of questions start popping up, and we'll of course stay on as long as we need to answer questions. But I will say thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're so happy to be. We're happy you made it. Oh, here we go, some questions. Great. I will also say, yeah, all right. Well, we're going to start with, these questions. Okay, let's see. Has the project site checklist? Okay, so the first question is, has the project site checklist from the spring application been consolidated into the architectural submission request? It has not, I know that was a request that we had in the spring. We were not able to put them together, so I will say, unfortunately, there is still some duplication between the site review checklist and the architectural submission, and I'm sorry about that. I think that will definitely be taken care of once we go electronic. But at this point, no, they haven't been integrated. And you said you don't see the specific form, the site review checklist in the packet. Well, I know it's there. I don't have the packet with me. It's after the zoning form in 3.2, I believe. But Andrew, I will email you exactly where it's located after this webinar is over. Thank you for that question. Okay, Erica, with regards to the awarded amount, if we are building 13 units but have to do it in a phase until will the total amount be available in the beginning, or will it be by phases? Okay, so I think what you're asking is, if you're doing a phase development, will the awards be available, all of the awarded funds be available up front? So if you are using our funding to purchase the land, then and all of our funds to purchase the land, that can be available at land purchase time when you're closing on the land. If you are doing construction, if you're using our funds to fund construction, we do that on a reimbursement basis and would need to process construction draws. So the funds would be available as you are progressing with construction. I think that's what you're asking. Okay, great. All right, are there any other questions? So we're going to start the 5 minutes over again, and Rick and I will be here for the next 5 minutes to answer questions. And if you don't have questions, then I think we've given you as much information as we have right now. But of course, we're always happy to answer any questions you have. Please submit questions to the HO NOFA email address, and we're more than happy to answer any and all questions that come our way.
Okay.
And just to let you all know, any questions that have come in during this webinar and any that come in after right now, of course, will be posted as part of our FAQs.
stuff that's up then?
All right. Well, yeah, go ahead. Wait just a minute.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks everyone for attending. We're going to end the webinar now, but as I said, please feel free to be in touch via the HO NOFA email box, and we'll look forward to seeing your submissions and your questions. Thanks again. Bye.